Good morning, and this is part 2 of the Hohner Verdi restoration. So, just get this like that. So what I've done is I've got my reeds all nicely cleaned, and the next step is I've just arranged them in pitch order so that they go from the lowest pitch up to the highest pitch. And now we're going to start sorting out the valves I'm going to use for these reeds. So to do that, I'm just going to spread them out a little bit so they just take up the whole space, so I've got more room to get my valves arranged as well. So I'm just going to spread them out. There we go. And because these are two sets of reeds, one standard tuned and one tremolo tuned, the reeds themselves are the same size. They're kind of in pairs, if you like. So the valves I'm going to use for one set are going to be the same valves I use for the second set. That's quite important because then you get the same performance for each note. So you keep the same size of valve, etc. So what I need to do now is choose the valves that are going to work best for each of the reeds. Now for this set of reeds, these sets of reeds, I'm going to have maybe 4 or 5 or more different sizes of valves so that I can then match the valve to the size of the reed. So on my little box up here, up there, I've got all of my valves. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to stop the video, get all the valves that I think I might need out and show you what I'm going to be choosing from. So just give me Okay, so I have got, for the treble reeds, 8 different sizes of valves that I use. I've got more sizes than this. I've got some bigger ones that I use for the bass reeds as well. So I've got another about 4 or 5 different sizes that are bigger that I use for the bass side as well. So they go from number 1, which are the smallest little valves, up to number 8, which are the biggest ones. Now the idea now is to find the valve which matches the reed, so it's got to be the right width and it's got to be the right length, and I don't want to have it too long, and I don't really want the valve to be too heavy for the reed. For example, if you've got a tiny little reed down here and I think, oh, I'll just put a big old valve like this on one of these reeds and just chop it down, well, it's too wide, and it's too wide for the slot, and it will just end up catching and getting in the way, and also it's a bit too heavy for the reed, and so it's got too much support, it's too thick, and so it'll need more air to get that reed to work, and so that will affect the performance of that reed. So what I want to find is the kind of the best fit, the smallest possible valve that will work well with the reed, if you like. So so what I'm going to do, I'm going to go along and I'm going to find the valve which I think matches the reeds, and I'm going to put them in pairs because each reed needs 2 valves. And once I've done that, I'm going to put the same valves on the second set because I want exactly the same valves for each reed on the second set. So what I'm going to do next, I'm just going to do this off camera, but I'm going to choose the valves that I'm going to use for each reed and just to set them out on the board here, and I'll show you what that looks like. Okay, that's done. So I think I've used 6 different sizes of valves, and I've put them in pairs for each reed, and because there's 2 matching kind of sets of reed blocks, of reeds, just that they're kind of one's tremolo tuned, one's standard tuned, I've matched up the valves so that each pair of reeds get the same valve. And so I've gone from the biggest to the smallest, and the last 4, the smallest valves, the highest pitch ones, didn't have any valves on, and so the really tiny valves tiny reeds don't need valves, and that's when I took the accordion apart, those didn't have any valves on. I've never really quite got into why these little tiny reeds don't need valves, but I've just followed what I've found already, and it doesn't create any problems. But if anyone's got any further explanation of why you don't put valves on those top reeds, I'd be very interested to hear. But it definitely works fine, so that's good. So those are all now all ready for gluing on. So before I do that, I'm just going to do one more thing. I'm going to check the reeds just to make sure that they've all got a nice gap between the tip of the reed and the reed plate, to make sure that none of them are choking or they're too close, and none of them are too big a gap. So that's the next thing I'm going to do. So let me just change the camera position. Okay, so this next little task is I'm going to check the reed. So I'll just take one for an example and just show. So on this reed, I'm just looking at the tip height at the end of the tip on both sides, and as a rule of thumb, I'm looking for about the thickness of the reed. That's how much gap I need between the reed and the reed plate. So I'm just checking that one, and if I find any reeds which are choking a bit, so when that reed tip height is very low or almost flush with the reed plate, then they will need a little bit of careful bending. Now to do that, what I would normally use would be a very fine bladed craft knife, and to bend the reed up a little, you have to be very, very careful. What you want to just slide it underneath, and you're going to bend it from about halfway up the reed. So you don't bend it from here, you have to go kind of more than halfway up, and then carefully lift it and just bend it very carefully, because it's very easy to kink the reed or break it. So you have to be really, really careful if you are going to increase the tip height. If you want to decrease the tip height, that's a different technique. So what I would do with that is I'd get a very fine flat blade screwdriver, and this time what you have to do is push down just over halfway up the reed towards that end, and you have to permanently bend it. So you have to push down quite hard to permanently bend the reed down, and again you've got to be really, really careful that you do it carefully. Try and push in the middle of the reed, and again it's probably just a bit over halfway. You're going to have to do that, but just be really, really careful, because it's really easy to knacker the reeds. So if I would give any advice about this, is practice on some old reeds, some reeds you've taken out of an accordion that is a junk accordion, never going to be used again. Practice, practice, practice on old reeds, rather than suddenly getting a reed from your nice refurbishment project and then actually knackering it. So just get some old reeds, play around with them, and just play around with changing the tip height, either by lifting it up, pushing it down. Just be really, really careful. That's my top tip. So what I'm going to do, I'll do this off camera because it's quite a lengthy process, but I'm just going to go along all of the reeds and check and alter the tip height. So I'm going to do it off camera, and then I'll do another little clip where I start to then get the valves glued on. Okay. Okie dokie. Right, here we go. So now it's time to glue the valves onto the reeds, and the glue I use is this, and it's Boterm, B-O-T-E-R-M, and it's actually shoe glue. It's Polish, but it's really, really good shoe glue. So it's actually I've tried Hohner valve glue. Have I got any left? I think I've run out of that, which is expensive, but actually I find this is better. So this is Boterm GTA, and it's shoe glue, but it works really, really well. So this is what I use for gluing on the valves onto the reeds. I've just got a little pot. I'm just going to put the glue on the top, and just a little tiny little brush, which I'm going to use for that as well. And what I'm going to do is start off with the lower end, if you like, and the amount of glue that I put on. So if you look at the valve, if you look at the width of the valve, well, imagine that's the width is kind of how long I'm going to glue. So what I'm kind of doing really is gluing like a square, the size of a square at the end of the valve, so it's going to have the same width as length, and that's how much glue I'm going to put onto that valve before I stick it on. So I'll just demonstrate on this one. So let's start this off. Let's put a bit of glue onto my little pot. So I'll just put it on there, just because it's just easy to then It's always good to have a little cloth or something just to wipe off any glue on your fingers. So you want pretty clean hands. So make sure you get the right side of the valve. So make sure that if you've got multi-layers like this one, 3 layers, make sure that's on the right side. And then I'm going to use my thumbnail just to make that square. Get my little brush. And I'm just going to make a square evenly of glue on the valve. Carefully turn it over. And then find your reed. And then butt up the valve against the rivet. So it's nice and square. Right, going up to the top. So it looks. Can you see that? Looks like that. Looks like that. And I'm going to leave that. I'm not going to cut it yet, so it needs a bit of trimming, but I'm going to leave that because it just needs, the glue needs a few minutes just to dry. So then I'm going to leave that one and move on to the next one and move along all the reeds. And I'm going to keep the same technique all the way along for different sizes of valves. Just a little, so you're making a square of glue if you like, so the length and the width of the amount of glue you're putting on the end is the same. Make a little square and then stick it on, butt it up to the little rivet and make sure you've got the valve nice and straight on the reed. So that's how I do it. So I'm going to just do this off camera because it just takes a while. But I'm going to glue all these first ones on from this set and from this set, and then what I'm going to do then is just trim them, then turn them over and do the same thing for the other side. Okay, but I'm going to do that off camera, I think. No, I'll show you how I trim them. Let me just glue them on. So what I've done here is I've valved one side of the reed plates. And what I'm going to do next is trim the valves. So when I've got a reed plate like this, sorry, here, and then I'm going to trim the length of that valve just past the edge of the reed slot. So I've got myself a nice pair of sharp hairdressing scissors, actually, really nice and sharp. I'm just going to trim the valve very carefully straight across. So it's just past the reed slot, and I'm going to trim because it's a multi-layer valve, the second layer I'm going to go back and trim it the same amount, and then that's done. So then I'll go along the whole line and trim all of the valves in the same way. Then I'll turn all the reeds over and do the same thing for the other side, and then those reeds will be ready for waxing back in. So let me just stop the video for a second and I can just show you one more little thing. So the final thing before I finish this little video is just one thing mentioned last time, which is finding out or checking that the bottom of the reed block is nice and flat. And what I'm going to do here is I'm going to get a pencil and I'm going to make some lines with the pencil all the way across. Trying to keep the lines consistent kind of thickness or shot hole, pressing with the same kind of hardness, pressure all the way across the reed block. So I've got lines all the way across the bottom, and then I've got my mirror, but on the mirror I have stuck some sandpaper. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to run the reed block, so just putting pressure on the length of the reed block, run it across like this. Now because the mirror is completely flat, what it will do, it will rub off the pencil marks at the points which are contacting with the mirror, but any points which are raised up, any kind of imperfections will be taken. I could recognise because the bits of pencil that haven't been rubbed off are the bits that are not yet in contact with that flat surface. So as I keep doing this, what I'm going to find is more and more of those pencil marks are going to be rubbed off, and any that are left means that those bits are not yet in touch with that sandpaper. We'll just keep going until we're going to put an even pressure all the way along the reed block until I don't have any pencil lines left over. It's a bit difficult doing it actually in front of the camera. Normally I have it on the table, but I just do this to demonstrate. Nearly there, just got a few more little pencil lines just there, so just keep going a second. Yep, getting there. Ooh, just a bit on the edge. Oh, very close. There we go. Happy with that? Just put that down so I don't get any dust anywhere. So now all the pencil marks been removed, so that's a nice flat surface. So when I put that back into the accordion, I've got the best chance of that being a really nice fit onto the treble side of the accordion. Okay, so I'm going to finish the video there. So that's just revolving and just preparing the base of the reed block before I start waxing in the reeds. So I hope that's been useful, and on the next video I'm going to go into waxing in the reeds. Okay, thanks for watching. Just one little thing, people sometimes say, where do I get my parts for restoring accordions and melodians? So I get my valves from two places. One of them I get from Vent Reed Valves, and Julius is the man who runs that company, and you can find him online and also on eBay, and very, very good for buying valves, so he's really super helpful. And then for the valves, but also just virtually anything you need, any parts you need for fixing accordions and melodians, it's CGM Musical Services, and Charlie Marshall is the gentleman who runs that one, and he's super helpful as well. Really, really nice, really helpful. It's a really great assortment of parts and spares for fixing accordions and melodians. So those are the two that I use. So I just thought I'd finish off the video with that. Thank you.